Thank you, Roland.
Great, welcome back.
Okay. So just so everyone knows, we're back live. Again, this is the Vermont House Committee on Commerce and Economic Development, along with our counterparts in the Senate Economic Development, General Housing, Military Affairs, with a joint hearing this morning. Again, January 29th, 2025 at 10:45 in the morning. Ellen, we'll turn it over to you.
And he's gonna kick us off.
All right, well, we're here to talk about that next phase of business when you're deemed to be an outward success. I'm sure inwardly it doesn't always feel like that at times. The challenges are persist throughout that, but you're starting to get attention from folks. Your business feels strong. Tell us about yourself, your business, how you got to that phase, and what were the challenges that popped up once you had reached a phase where you had employees and your business started to be stable and mature.
Okay, I get the first. So my name is Abby Duke. I'm wearing hats today. I'm a representative from Burlington, and I own a catering company called Sugar Snap. I started it 21 years ago. And so I'm going to give you, I'll say went back and I was looking at the history, right? I ran my QuickBooks report and looked at it year by year in preparation for this, which was interesting. You know, I had reliving 21 years. And I really was struck by that. It's sort of like Joseph Conrad's hero's journey. Right? So you can see that I'm going to spare you 12 stages of the hero's journey. And I'm just going to talk about 3. So I came into wanting to start a business as I had a passion I wanted to start a business that involved a small farm in the Intervale in Burlington and selling its end product. Okay, so I'd been working at Gardner Supply and I left and I told everyone I was entering Abbey Duke University and I was going to spend 2 years as a personalized graduate program. I was going to spend 2 years learning how to start a business and then I was going to start it. And 18 months later, I opened the doors of a little prepared foods business on Riverside Avenue, right up the top of the hill before you go down to the Intervale, where I had a small farm. I had business partners to start with. And so that first part of the business was really it's like the passion, right? It's like, I want to start a business and it's skill acquisition. And I was able to learn all kinds of skill, all kinds of sources, and back up to that. I'm sort of like a super user of all of these different supports. I have interacted with many of the different organizations in this room and have gotten a tremendous amount of advice and help over the years and would not be here today without that. So backing up. So the first 5 years were really about learning how to run a business. When you're starting a business, you have to learn, you're the HR manager, the technology person, you're the marketing person, you're everything. We bootstrapped it, started it with very little money and just tried to invest money as it came in. And after about 5 years of working hard, building a business, incrementally growing, growth every year, profits just enough to cover, we were able to pay ourselves just enough to cover cover our basic needs, rent and things like that. I wanted to grow. Okay, so now we're entering the second phase of the hero's journey, where my original business partners were like, we don't want to do that. We've been working hard without a lot of benefit. We're leaving. So I went through started learning about the capital continuum, went through the process of raising money, raised $300,000, half of it from private investors, mostly customers who lent money, and Vita, some money from Vita and some money from a local credit union, and put in a big commissary kitchen about 5 miles away in South Burlington and grew the business, and then entered just a world of pain. Over the next year, all that money I borrowed, spent it all, went from 1 location to 2 locations. Then I had 3 locations, and spent about 5 years in fact, listening to our previous speakers, I felt my heart rate go up because I spent 5 years probably in a stage of trying to, when you don't have working capital, you don't have money, but you have, and you don't have the right scale for the capital that you have. You don't have the right scale for what you have. It is very difficult. Everything I did, in this 5-year period had to pay for itself immediately. I didn't have you know, if you're a if you're a business that's properly capitalized and you can say, I'm going to invest $100,000 and hire somebody with the goal of growing $300,000 next year, something like that. When you're a business that is really stretched and maybe things haven't gone exactly how you planned, you don't have that. And nobody's going to loan that money to you, like that working capital. So, I needed to hustle and figure it out. So slowly over time, I was able to get to a point where we were a bit more profitable. There's a bit more money coming in. So I'm going to say a couple of needs during that period, and I'm going to go into the more mature part. One of the needs certainly is working capital. Another need is, and this is where I had the fortune of, there's two resources I want to highlight that I had the fortune to be part of during this extended period. One was I was part of a cohort group with the Vermont Agricultural Development Program, which the ATP, that's what it was called at the time. Yeah, it doesn't really exist anymore. It's morphed into a different sort of coaching sort of thing. But a guy named John Ryan ran this program. I was getting on as a client, and I called him my business therapist because when you're in a period like that, it's like there were times where I was behind by 60 days on every single vendor at home and at work. Who do you talk to about that? You don't talk to your employees. You don't talk to your customers. You don't talk to your family. You really, if you don't have a peer support network, it's very isolating and lonely. So that was something that John created a peer group of other businesses he was working with, and he would bring the business owners together for regular, basically sessions just to talk. And I found that, and I made connections. I found that incredibly helpful. So then I'm going to keep speeding up, going on. So I tried, during this period, I learned a lot. I tried I became a sort of a master adapter of this sort of thing where you're just trying things. Okay, it didn't quite work. I'm going to adapt. I'm going to push it. And then we were coming out. I changed the business model, simplified it. And then the pandemic, I had the best year we'd ever had. And 2020 was going to be amazing. It was going to be a great year, right?
And it was amazing.
So I was at a catering conference, as it happens, in March when it was all going down. And then I left early. This is in Las Vegas. Las Vegas was shutting down basically as all these caterers were leaving. I was flying back and doing cash flow analysis on, a notebook just like this, okay. And by the time I landed, I'd called all the employees together and I was like, all right, everybody go to unemployment right now before everybody else goes on Monday. This was Friday, right? So they got in line because it was like, this is happening to us now, but everybody else is going to hit it next week. Now, I will say for COVID, after spending the bulk of 10 years, adapting and trying different things and trying different models and tweaking, I was prepared because I was able to right away start trying different business models and different things. I also, because of my relationship with VSJF, I was able to access a coach, which was really helpful to help talk me through some different things. Now, COVID ended up being a huge year for us because we took on a small contract that got much bigger, providing meals for the Department of Children and Families for the motel program. So I operated a factory for a year, literally a prepared meal factory. And so as we came out of COVID and the business opened up again, I had an unfamiliar experience, which was I paid off all the debt. I had money in the bank, and I then was able to operate a business that was properly capitalized. And I will tell you, it is a much better experience and so I've spent the past 4 years at this point. I said, okay, 10 years ago, I went to my first business succession planning workshop. 10 years ago, it's like, okay, you got to start planning for 5 years ahead of time. I'll start planning now. So for 10 years, I've been in the back of my mind thinking, how do you set up a business for succession? Coming out of the pandemic, I was able to start implementing things like, how do I slowly work myself out of the business? how do I build the systems, build the staffing? And really I focused, and I really focused on having a business of the right scale to maximize profits and maximize employee benefits. So, you know, I spent a lot of years trying to grow and then realized not every business in every industry, there's a sweet spot of scale, right? So coming out of the pandemic, and over the last couple of years, I've really been able to tweak that and understand. And I really very much understand for a full service catering business in Chittenden County, what is a sweet spot of scale. And I've been able to increase the wages I pay significantly. That keeps people, I mean, I have 6, to give you a sense of scale, I have 7 full-time year-round employees. The shortest tenure with me is 4 years. Longest is 8, I think. And then I have about 50, what we call on-call employees, bartenders, servers who work events. It's kind of like really well-paid gig workers, basically, but they can pick and choose. Turns out the way the employment works now, it's a lot easier to find those people than it used to be because they don't want to commit to a full-time job, but they do want to work. So that has kind of been the scale, is that, and I've just been working that scale. And I don't, you know, we don't need to grow per se. The important thing is growing profits, not necessarily revenue, and growing but that lens of how do I increase how much I'm able to pay employees, not necessarily more employees, just take the current ones that I take care even better of the current ones that I have. So I would say the needs over the last 4 years have really been about helping to figure out the succession planning. I mean, I'm, you know, I obviously have been able to work myself out of the business enough that I can serve in the legislature. I still run the business. I have a great team who really run the day to day. And, you know, I'm kind of keeping my ears open and open to the possibility of finding, and I'm not in a rush, but I am trying to find what is the next ownership look like of my business. And that is really not easy. It is really difficult first you need to set up the business for sale, but then also finding what is that next generation of ownership? Who is it and how do you finance it? And so it's I've talked to lots of business owners. It can take years of figuring that out. And that slide was pretty sobering, seeing the number of sort of boomers, right, owning those businesses. It's really sobering. I'm in Generation X and I'm thinking about it. So I can only imagine if I was a baby boomer. Great. So good. Thank you so much, Abby. Yep.
Thanks, Abby. Yeah. It's great that you're thinking about that now, because I think so many business owners wait until they're ready to exit and then start to think about it and become very frustrated with the process and how long it takes. Yeah. Whitney.
My name is Whitney. I own Axel's Gallery and Frame Shop in Waterbury. I'm the second owner of this business. It's been in business for over 40 years. I've owned it for 13. I started the succession planning 5 years ago. When I went from a solo entrepreneur to, I have 4 employees now, including myself, only 1 full-time, 2 part-time, and then myself. She isn't really either of those, part-time or full-time. I have seen some joys and challenges of owning this business. It's not one of those super sectors that you mentioned on the slide. It's this strange niche product that we sell. The majority of our business is custom picture framing. And I would guarantee probably a lot of you sitting around in this room have only used custom framing maybe once in your life. Hopefully more.
Oh,
Me too.
some of us use it a lot.
Yeah, when you do get ready, please find me. I am incredibly grateful for the services that these service providers have given me over the 13 years. Actually, my business advisor is sitting here and I almost feel like he was here for me. And I pulled him out in the hallway just now just to get some more advice about something else I was thinking. So I wouldn't be in business without having these relationships that I've created with these service providers. In fact, I'm energized listening to today's conversation about how I could utilize their experience even more with some other things that I'm planning and working on. So I don't want to underestimate what you have given me personally, so thank you. COVID was a really great turning point for my business. It actually was really great for us financially. A lot of people were now home overanalyzing those spaces. So we saw the benefit of that. We followed the governor's protocols and did appointment only, and that was actually a big turning point in my business where we're open for business during our business hours. This was the first time that we created an appointment-based system. And that opened our eyes to a lot of different ways to do business with our community. What else can I say here? I've utilized these service providers for negotiating leaseholder agreements. We just moved from across the street, it'll be 3 years now. But when the commercial real estate seemed to be pretty hot, especially in Waterbury, our landlord or representation from our landlord came to us and told us that our rent was changing as of last month. And that I could expect my rent to quadruple over the next 3 years. So I was able to inform them that I actually did have a lease that had an agreement, and which surprised them and I'm sure frustrated them. But, I was writing on the wall that I needed to start looking for a new location. And I was able to secure the space across the street. I'm paying more rent. But I didn't have very many options. So that was definitely a challenge. It's still a challenge that's presenting myself. Each buyer that comes to me questions why I'm paying so much rent. But it's just a fact. It's one of those factors of doing business, I feel like, in a city that people really are looking at to moving their business or their homes to. So I'm trying to navigate that. I've also used the Small Business Development Center for valuations, trying to help understand how much my business is worth for the value of it. So that's been a really great negotiation tool. I will say that one of the challenges that my potential business owners or buyers are showing me is the relocation cost to Vermont. That's factoring into, my business is small. I'm not selling it for a lot of people. But the cost of relocating to Vermont and the challenges that they're having finding housing to just try to get here is significant. So much that it's in conversation with me over buying my business, and it might impact the price I sell my business for. We did get some support with some human resources issues that we had that came up when I started having employees on board. There's so many things to do in a day that you go to bed thinking that you just didn't serve the day justice because there's just too much to do. So I am excited to get out of this business. I'm excited to work for someone else. Maybe it'll be the person who buys my business. I'm not sure about that, but I will say it's incredibly hard to sell a business that has variable income from year to year. I don't get a paycheck. I get kind of the leftover of what that is, and it varies greatly, and it's under the poverty line many times. So I think it's hard to sell that. It's hard to sell the responsibility of providing a cultural resource to my community. And it's also hard to sell the responsibility of keeping my team employed. So those are big weights to shoulder, and I'm trying to do the best that I can to sell that in a positive light.
So how successful are you at finding people to dialogue with you about selling this business? Is it difficult to find potential buyers?
It's difficult to find the buyer that hits all those points.
Sure.
That's fine with a variable income, wants to support my community and keep my employees employed. A lot of people are looking at how to cut costs. Is this person in your business important? Do you need to be in this location? How can you make more money? What are your ideas on how to make more money? There are a lot of people that come and kick the tires. And they are also interested in owning a business that they don't have to work in. That is the majority of people that I'm getting. Is can I kind of be a absentee owner and the business can run itself? I wish that was the case. To some degree right now, I feel like Abby, you mentioned a sweet spot where I feel like I'm in that sweet spot, oddly enough, when I'm ready to sell it. So it's made me think, is this the right time?
Could actually enjoy it right now.
Yeah. So I feel like I have one person, right? It only takes one person. And I've got one person that's far enough down the line. Not to say that I haven't received an offer before. This one person would be perfect. And I don't know how to stay cool. Like I'm trying to stay cool and just answer the questions and hopefully I'll get there. But I would say the relocation, the variable income is all really has been the hardest part for the buyer. I pay $90 a month for my business to be listed on an Biz Buy Sell. It's a company that basically is a wholesaler for businesses. And that's where I've gotten most of my real leads. A lot of my community is just like, how much are you selling this for? That stuff. But
And I will say there are brokers who help with, do you work with brokers?
I'm not working with a broker because I'm selling my business for such a small amount.
And there aren't many brokers that work. There are very few brokers that work with small businesses.
Right.
Yeah, there.
One for general stores.
I have a question for both of you, around this notion of regulation. Oftentimes, there's a general conversation that's happening, like businesses are overregulated. And again, as we talked about earlier, that one size doesn't fit all. So I'm curious about, how does it feel for you as business owners in terms of being able to keep up with the regulatory changes that are happening and scale appropriateness of when you find out that something new has been passed? Does it feel like it fits your business? Is there something that is useful to say about that?
I would say that, first of all, I'm not the best business owner. I don't keep up with a lot of things because there's so many fires I'm putting out. So I really rely on the team that I work with, which is really just my accountant and Charlie Iniger from the Vermont Small Business Development Center. So I rely heavily on them to help me know what's going on in landscape. But I also trust the people that I've elected to be in these seats to think of me in this regulation that is being passed. So I have incredible trust, maybe too much, that these things that I am now having to do is for the general good for my community.
So a lot of the regulations our business deals with our health department and liquor control. But I will say just in general, I've had very helpful and as a general rule, I've had helpful and positive interactions with state agencies from the beginning, when I was like, how do you register a business? And the Secretary of State's office, helped walk me through that. So I would say the service that all of our agencies provide is really important as far as communicating regulatory changes. There have been a couple of tweaks to liquor laws since I've been in business, since I had a liquor license, that have been really helpful for small businesses. And I think that has been through some advocacy from, small business community. So, I have not felt like, we have not felt overregulated. The key is, I think, that communication and the technical assistance to help understand what those things are. I did go through a very painful tax audit a number of years ago, and they had created a fact sheet for caterers because it turns out we were not alone in interpreting rooms and meals tax versus sales tax incorrectly. I won't go into the weeds about it, but it was painful, but they did provide really good service about helping me understand it. And then we're proactively educating around the state. So I think that just the ability for us to be proactive in providing resources to help people understand the regulations and the tax implications of different things is really important.
A room full of policymakers here. If you look back on your business, what's a support that would have helped you along the way? Don't say free money because they don't like that.
That's also not what we.
I think for me, paying self-employment tax on top of my individual tax just seems, it's hard. It's hard. It's a hard pill to swallow. My husband and I, we don't have kids. And I've always thought, God, it would be great to have that tax credit in addition to other things. But it would be wonderful if there was some sort of credit given back or some sort of benefit besides the feel goods of giving this service to my community and my clients. It would be great to have some sort of, I don't know, thanks for doing a good job kind of thing.
Yeah, I would say that the challenge of supporting yourself while you're starting and growing a business is, I come from my family situation is that if I was really, in fact, a couple of times my parents stepped in and helped me out a bit. And if I hadn't had that, I could not have started a business, so I see there's sort of some assets that I had coming in and starting a business that if I had not had that, I could not have done it. If I hadn't able to use Dr. Dinosaur for my children, would not have been able to have a business. Had not, so I think that thinking about supports for small business owners when they are in that early and growth stage where, like, how do we support the businesses essentially because those, we've heard from everybody here who was not always able to pay themselves. So I think how we can support business owners themselves through that. Don't have the answer, except I don't know if we could figure out healthcare. Or we solve healthcare. That would help, and solve housing. I mean, the other thing is looking back to, I started my business in December of 2003. I had bought a house. My mortgage was like $650. So that's the other piece, is that when we talk about cost of living, it's like, now, could I start a business now? Thinking about back when I was 32, 33, whatever, I was able to have, my cost of living was really low. At the time, I didn't think so, but looking back on it, it's different now, right? Even like a starter, a little starter house, it's not going to be. So that's the other thing I think about, is that we are stifling our economic growth and our ability to start businesses when a business owner can't live on peanuts, while they're in those early years while they're building their business. And I would say financial literacy, financial skills. I think I'm pretty savvy and I read a lot and I pay attention and I really understood my profit and loss statement until I was in an SBA emerging leaders class in 2017. That was the first time I learned how the balance sheet and the profit and loss statement interact. My mind was blown. I did not know, and this was and I thought I was pretty seasoned. So I think more basic skills, more financial literacy skills for business owners. I think a lot of small business owners do not understand their books. They don't know their costs. They don't know, they're like, I'm making money, but they don't know why they're making money. They don't know what the scale of their business is. It took me years of trial and error to understand, oh, I shouldn't be a $5 million business. That is not it's not ever going to get there. Right. And I shouldn't even try because of a variety, that I love that your triangle, right? thinking about the market, the business, all these things. But I think more basic skills for business owners, more peer support, more, replicate all of you so that there's more of you, because there is a lot of need out there. And the other thing I would emphasize is that we talk a lot, and you hear a lot in the policy space about growth, about adding jobs. And I think we also need to remember we are trying to improve jobs.
Yeah.
Right? We're trying to improve, like Allison, you were talking about before. Like I employ fewer people than I did 5 years ago, but they make a lot more money. Right. The lowest paid full-time year-round employee that I have makes almost $29 an hour. And they get an HR raise, so they get money towards their health insurance. So that was not the case 5 years ago. In 2019, I was like on a path of incremental improvements, but I employ fewer people. Make more money. So I think we also need to have that mindset of like, how are we helping businesses improve their bottom line? Because that is not just improving the employees' lives, it's also that business owner is going to be making a whole lot more money. And then that business owner is going to invest money in the business. They're going to invest, then they might be starting to, like, growth becomes more, but not growth for growth's sake, right? Growth because it makes sense. So those are some of the, I guess, concepts I think that we should be thinking about.
Yeah, and I can definitely verify through our business coaching program, we work with companies that are more at Abby's stage of maturity and scale. That usually they have at least 500,000 in sales, up to maybe 5 million is our sweet spot for our coaching program. And we work with a lot of companies that you will know their brand and you will think they are extremely successful because you see their product in the marketplace. You might buy those products yourself. And when you pull up the hood and you see what's really going on, you're like, oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay, we got some things to fix here. And it's not for lack of working hard. It's not for not wanting to do these other things for your business. But as you go through these stages of development, as we've said, you need to pay attention to different things as a business owner. And so many business owners get into the business because they have a passion for the product. They want to bring that to the market. They want to sell that product to customers and see the joy on their faces, because they just love that product. And so when you get a lot farther along in the maturity stage, you can't be the person doing that.
Yeah.
We have independently owned grocery store owners that are still stocking their shelves, which means that they're not working on their business to figure out how to do it better so that they can be they then can be paying better wages and benefits because they're actually being more profitable as a company. So I think from my vantage point, the message I would really love for you all to take away from this is don't make assumptions about the profitability of our small business sector. Just because they're in business doesn't mean that they don't have some basic business fundamentals that they haven't yet learned or experienced or gone through. And don't make the assumption that they're just swimming in cash, because it's just not the case. And if, we've had 4 examples here today, but remember, we're talking about 27,000 businesses that have 0 to 4 employees, 29,000 in total, small firms in the state, 93% that have less than 20 employees. Just think about the order of magnitude of what we're talking about. Linda said you have 535 businesses that you work with in a year. So just think about that magnitude of scale. And we're going to transition into some Q&A and discussion. So thank you both so very much. Thank you. It would be great, I think, if our earlier panelists could also come up here, stay where you are. Let's just get around. We don't need to have this anymore for right now.
I was just going to add, as we transition, so many things. It's great to sit and listen and sort of put these pieces together, because you think about the pandemic, the businesses that were able to survive and thrive had those elements, the understanding of their numbers, truly knowing their numbers, and the ability to diversify and be also digital, to have e-commerce as another element of selling and so forth. So, we think about what we just said today. One of the key takeaways to get us going was the element of how many businesses need and deserve at that very, very small and at that early stage, the support. And yet with more businesses trying to prepare to sell, all of that group now is requesting assistance at the same time. So that, where the pressure is. But anyway, we have some good conversation topics to get going.
Yeah, we have a good half an hour for just open conversation, questions of our panelists, questions of those of us that were helped to organize this. We have a lot of service providers in the room here, as we've mentioned, and they introduced themselves. So if there's, for instance, a question about legal, I'm going to call on Nicole from the Vermont Law and Graduate School. She might be able to answer a question too. So we just want to open this up more and have a real conversation. See if, Senator, there's some things that pop of some needs and some policy asks might arise out of this. So it's really opening up to you all. Ask away.
There was something I thought of after that I think is important to also bring up, especially in our fields. Most people graduating from medical school today have at least $500,000 worth of debt and student loans that they're paying back. And that really indebts them to these systems that are not healthy and not sustainable for them. We lose an entire medical school class every year to suicide. Physician suicide, clinician suicide is staggeringly high, and we need to really be focusing on these alternatives. So just one more plug, some of the ways we can make our clinicians' lives easier who are then taking care of us as we age.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to pivot entirely away from what you just said, because that's, I think it's related. I'll share my bias is that I think space really matters, just being able to bump into each other and build relationship and build connection. My other bias is that I think Wayway and the Vermont Professionals of Color Network team should have like a hub. The organizations that are holding our economy together with, shoestring, should really have some kind of flagship space in which to do that work. So I texted Melissa and Wayway Propeller in New Orleans. If people haven't envisioned it or visited, it feels a little bit like a hula, but born out of a flood zone and full of women and people of color. And they do social impact, business and nonprofit acceleration, specifically in food, health, water, social justice. They just are so clear about who they're serving and what they're doing and the geography of that and the mission-driven component of that. And it just occurs to me, like, if you visit a place like Hula, I said this to them when I was last with Lucia, the director there, it is designed for you to see your growth potential. It is designed so you can see yourself going from a desk to office space to, moving across the driveway to their much larger space. And most businesses in our rural places don't ever get to see visually what it would look like to grow, like physically see, hey, that business started, a few months before me, and now they're moving into, a space. So as we look at, tight budget dollars, and we keep hearing about technical assistance and, flood impacts and not being able to find the right people or stay in touch with them or, have that community. I just hope we look at the ways that we can be physically there for our businesses in more places in the state, and particularly maybe Washington County, and maybe we can do that.
Thank you so much for bringing this up, because we were actually just talking about that. That's something BTPOC in our report we have found is people wanting to be in space together to make sure that they're connecting as business owners, supporting each other. And I was just talking to Ruth, Jada, and Maya, and they have a physical location, Jada and Maya, right here in town. And how can we do a networking event? But to your point, we don't have a physical location that we can do that on a regular basis. And VTPOC, we are working across the state, offering this program called Co-work and Chill, and also virtual spaces for folks who are working in more rural areas to connect with one another, to know what resources are in existence, to sometimes have our technical assistance person there, to support business owners. But that, again, is limited because, going to Fairleigh is $152 in reimbursement miles. I know that for a fact, like that. We literally just talked about this. And then we have to balance, like, what are we actually going to be able to offer people? Because, like, do we then just stay in Chittenden County, because that's where a lot of our team is based? We have someone in Thetford, but like for someone else to drive all the way out there, we have to really balance it because it doesn't necessarily make financial sense.
Oh, yeah, and in addition to that, there's a company a company I stumbled into on Facebook, I guess, because I was doing a lot of this capital expansion and trying to scale up my knowledge of what I need to know to run the business at this growth stage. And I really was attracted to their model because they are a school of people who are experts in business growth, and they help the business owner get the MBA while they scale up their business. And they use a lean methodology, which is for software developers. That's how they create products through iteration. So very lean approach, really startup bootstrap approach to helping businesses scale up and also scale up their expertise and come out of the whole process with an MBA. And they also help match you to venture capitalists or funding sources that can help you like now operationalize your plan. So thinking about helping businesses in that kind of non-traditional, but also tapping into all the traditional institutions that are out there and helping them work together.
Also, give us your interior design card. It's five.
Yeah.
It kind of just shifts us a little bit from the need of space conversation, but I'm curious about how shifts in technology, particularly social media, have been affecting your ability to advertise.
I mean,
Didn't mean to
say the inside part out loud. Concerns about meta information. Marketing is very, very expensive. And, that was another thing we were talking about in terms of like collaborating and growing, and can Vermont help us with marketing? I joke we're one of Montpelier's best hidden secrets, like the fact that people don't know we're here with the primary care shortage and the mental health shortages that we have. And it's from no lack of trying on our part. But I think, in this current landscape, we have to be mindful of where we're putting ourselves out and the safety of those spaces. So it is going to impact.
I have a technology comment. It's not so much about marketing. I'll say my business is in a really fortunate position, which is, so after, we've been in business for 21 years, and I feel like the switch happened after about 15 years, where all of a sudden everything just became a little easier. We're sort of part of the background, right? Anytime I'm also in an industry, especially coming out of the pandemic, where there's not enough to go around. So there's demand for catering. There are very few established with really good reputations, like caterers that you kind of know, and so as a result, our marketing is all basically word of mouth and repeat. We work closely with a handful of venues. I've really made very strategic decisions about how to for that, so that as a result, we mostly work with the same people in the same places. But technology has made it tremendous. Like, I can't tell you how much easier it is to run my business because of the apps and the technology. I can pick up my phone right now, and there's all kinds of things I can check in on just by, scheduling app, scheduling, just all the internal apps for running the business is really, I couldn't have run the business like I'm doing 10 years ago because there are apps that make it a lot easier. That said, I am definitely not, we use social media mostly just as because we have to. We don't really do advertising on it. We use it more as just a validator. So someone can go to our Instagram feed and be like, oh, yeah, okay. They do know what they're doing. But anyway, do you have anything?
Yeah, well, as professional marketer, and our business relies very heavily, almost, debilitatingly heavily on marketing and advertising.
Mhm.
We have not been able to succeed because we do not have an ample marketing and advertising budget. And in order to penetrate the sphere and not be just a blimp that, people cannot see, and human nature, you need to see something over and over again for you as a business to establish your legitimacy. And the cost of being able to do that is it's extremely high for a startup and a small business. And trying to also make that case to financial institutions is so difficult. They don't understand why you have to spend tens of thousands of dollars just to appear somewhere and hope that you get customers in return. But that's the nature of the game. We have to spend that. And so we've also pivoted and leveraged and are influencers in a way, content creators. We've had to do that so that we are visible and we can build that trust in ways that are accessible to our community. And that is working well for us, but it's not the only way. Like we still have to spend money to make money.
Sorry, I just wanted to, Mike Ripley, who couldn't be here today, he had also, when we were having conversation with Ruth, wanted to put a point on it, what Ruth is saying. When we're talking about marketing, we're also talking about branding, having something that's visually appealing, and that's why it's costing so much. He also noted that, obviously advertising costs a lot, but the need to have consistency of content is really important so that you continuously keep people engaged in a world of social media at this point. So he was talking about that balance between spending his time on marketing because he's a one-person shop, and then also thinking about how can I hire somebody because he has a 9-to-5 job. He's also running this business. How can I hire somebody, but I don't have the finances to hire somebody? And then also needing time to spend on operations. So there's a lot here, and I want to call him Miko over there.
Hi, everyone. So I run a group called Vermont Womenpreneurs. I work with a lot of the solopreneur community, particularly women-owned businesses. I'm also friends with a lot of the micro influencers here in the state. As one who has a 12,000 follower account, I will say it has no meaning. And I really say this, and actually one of my colleagues, Saf Stewart, who owns Adventure Dinner, she really described it this way. In Vermont, word of mouth counts. It's the consistency about the brand, people trust you. It's outside of there, it's a little bit more difficult. It's that we utilize social media as an amplifier to let people know about our businesses and everything else. Does it equate to having more clients? Not necessarily. I've talked to several women who make quilted apparel. They blew up on social media, especially during the pandemic. They have 25,000 followers or more. And I asked them, does that equate to sales? And the majority of the time they'll say is no. So you spend a lot of time entertaining people about your business, and it's a lot of wasted time. Financially, it does not always work out, but this is what I've learned is the strength here in Vermont is that our word of mouth still reigns here. I don't, probably a little bit more in the rest of New England, but that's kind of how, in terms of the investment of dollars, it's kind of dropping into a black hole when it comes into advertising.
Can I say something about that? I think that that's a really excellent point. I was born and raised in Vermont and lived many other places before coming back here and going to grad school and then starting this business with Jada. And I think there's a way
I was talking to my husband about this last night, and neither of us are, search engine optimization experts. So maybe there's someone in the room that is in that field, but I think there's a way that we can, as small businesses, again, across service industries, help optimize each other's websites by pointing to each other's websites. These are terms that I'm just learning, but I think there's a way that we can create an internal referral source of small businesses, speaking to the credibility of word of mouth, like this is a person that I would recommend, even as a healthcare business, this is a person that I would recommend for framing my photo, or for catering my event, or for, real estate or publicity. There's a way that we can do that and lift each other up and not depend as heavily on content creation for social media platforms.
I was just gonna say, this is such an interesting piece of a conversation that I had during the break. And I'll just sort of tee it up. If there's any other dialogue with our members, it would be great. We talked about needs and trends by stage of business development, but there's an overlaying piece when we talked about generations, from baby boomers to Gen X to millennials, about what are there some generalizations about the way that they're seeking our guidance, support, coaching, advising that's different today and in the next 5 years than it was 10 years, 15, 20 years ago. So what are we seeing for their skill sets in terms of use of technology? And again, not to generalize, but the other is the way that they request our guidance. Some of it's the same as it was, and some of it's very different. The desire to be one-on-one versus a group cohort, the desire to meet face-to-face, or just as happy to be on Zoom and never leave their business. So us as service providers need to be constantly aware of what our market, our customers and clients, how we can maximize the funding and the capacity of our teams to deliver the most that we can, knowing the generational differences as well as stages and other components of small business. I don't know if you would add to that.
No, I mean, that was where my question was, right? Like, and how do we as a state do the best to support all of the different stages, all of the different generations? Where are the gaps, right? And where are we overspending where we should be spending more in a different area? And I mean, obviously we're not spending enough in any of the areas, but you know what I mean? Like in general, right? Like, and so I'm really looking to you for that guidance, right? And to, who are the clients that we just can't reach because they need something we're not offering, because the way we start business is changing, because the supports we need in the business community are very different today than they were 40 years ago. And
it's great for us to have some takeaways as well as everyone else, because this is energizing for us as a community of service providers to sort of take our thoughts from today and go out and, continue to work together.
Well, to tag on to what Edie just said, because we talked about this during the break, how do we amplify the dollars that we are able to allocate to this? How can we, for example, build your one-on-one coaching, navigating to being a cohort of similar businesses at similar growth periods of that 29,000 businesses? And the other, David, there may not be specific asks, but the needs that are illustrated are so stark and clear, I think. And all the areas that we are able to help in technical assistance, workforce, public policy, and to some degree, financing, figuring out how we can really be actually effective in working capital. I'm not actually clear yet on how we, as a state, but the other need I've heard starkly illustrated is when our medical providers don't have healthcare insurance. So I think we really have to be looking, when you have a critical mass of 29,000 businesses, we have to be, and Blue Cross Blue Shield is struggling to survive. We have a population that has need, and we have a business that has need. Surely we can come up with what the chamber used to have, which was a group offer that was reasonable and less expensive. And I think 29,000 businesses could surely navigate and negotiate a great deal with Blue Cross Blue Shield at this moment. So I don't know what the right umbrella is that they should be all under, but it strikes me that you're in a great negotiating position. And we desperately need to be able to have that. And whether it's SBDC, offer, who's the umbrella? It had been the chamber, but that is a clear need that we need to be able to.
I think there's a policy actually that prevents that from happening at this point.
Maybe that's a policy we should be.
Yeah, so we, BTPOC, we had thought about doing that for our members, and we spoke with Lake Champlain Chamber of Commerce, and I think at this point, it might have been like 10 years, there was policy enacted that prevents that from happening. And so you can only do it for dental insurance, and vision insurance, you can group, but you can't group.
I remember that because that's what, that was the stumbling block the chamber hit. And so we need to be able to figure out how to
And that's a problem for nonprofits.
get rid of that. Yeah.
Yeah.
But one of the points around, like existing programs that just for literally a little bit more money could really maximize impact. I think what the RDCs have stood up with having an online portal to match small grants, $3,000 to $5,000 to be able to get that next stage website done, to get the legal counsel that you need, or to get a better accountant who can really help make sure that your numbers are, your chart of accounts and your numbers are really where they need to be so that you can then go apply for a loan. Like those kinds of small investments in businesses at critical stages and making it easy. I mean, Andy, you can speak to like the paperwork involved in doing that was probably pretty minimal, right? And it was pretty quick to get that money out the door.
Which is
Just connecting those people that are the connections are not happening naturally.
right. But that also brings up the issue, which we haven't discussed, which is micro business. And small amounts make a big difference that we have found with micro business. And in terms of the impact, the big bang for the buck, our investment in micro business has been hugely rewarding. And one of you want to say anything about micro business? Because it's sure on our radar screen.
So the microbusiness organization,
The action group.
CVOEO, was the representative on that hub and spoke community navigator pilot program I referenced for those 2 years. And so in that case, they were one, but represented all 5 to be statewide. And certainly we all benefited from a greater referral back and forth. That again, sort of sharing, what are we doing? What are we seeing? What are the needs? And they did a lot of programming that we all drove our, contacts and clients to based on topic. A lot was around financial literacy, digital literacy, and just convening. So people had a place to talk about common challenges. So yes, a critical partner on, the continuum, certainly in our view, as far as a close statewide partner.
The other thing I might suggest, take a look at it, and Secretary Curley, I'm really sorry I'm not giving you a heads up on this until right now. But Secretary Curley and everybody that is working at Department of Economic Development is working so hard. They're so under-resourced, honestly, compared to other states. The department is just too few people trying to manage too much. And then with all of the flood recovery stuff, how you had to stand up the VGAP program and manage so many millions of dollars going through there. It was unbelievable, the hours that staff put in. So thank you for that. And one of the things that they run, you may be familiar with, is the Vermont Training Program. And over the years, that program has had some outside eyes on, let's say, that raised some questions about who those funds were going towards. And it over time has really been very, very prescriptive over the exact type of training that can be delivered and to whom and who those funds go towards and all that. There's a lot of, it's very narrowly prescripted, in my opinion, at this point. So much so that one of the things I think there's an opportunity to take a look at is a lot of it is designed for upskilling existing workforce. Critical needs, especially in our larger businesses. So it's not about not doing that and probably needing to do more of it. It's an and. The and is, as you've heard today, small business owners are themselves workers in their business. And right now, the way the statute reads, they are not considered a worker, and thus for instance, my coaching program, your business assistance program, other VMAC, who was here earlier. If we want to work with the entrepreneur to help them with their leadership skills and thus improve their business for better wages, better benefits, more profitability, healthcare, and their management team in things like strategic planning, mapping out their expansion, like thinking about project development that's going to get them to that next stage of development. Those funds are not usable. They're not accessible. It doesn't qualify for what the statute says those funds are to be used for. So again, not to say don't prevent the upskilling work, but there is an existing state program that is well run. It just is under-resourced. You could add more funding to that, open up the statute a bit, provide those funds to actually be workable for small businesses, because right now it really isn't. That's an idea to play around with. Sorry, I hope that's okay. So
It's fine. I'm obviously going to support, the government recommend, but I will advocate for flexibility because I do think our labor force is changing. And I think that we need to pivot with it. So I do appreciate your comments about how people work differently. And we should be thinking about how they work differently and how they can be successful and how we can support them. So I really do appreciate it.
And you just talked about the skills that are required to run a small business or when you're just starting wearing all the hats, and how often you go in because you did something, you do something, you make something, you serve something, but then you have to be an owner and transition. And that upskilling as the owner,
yes,
to focus on all those additional things as you hire people and you step back into management and leadership, all of that is education and training and upskilling on the owner. So good dialogue.
Yes, please fix that.
But I actually, I'm gonna go back to a point that Senator Clarkson actually made. You had talked about offering like maybe in-person or virtual collective meetups. So I wanted to point out at least for VTPOs, one of the reasons that we haven't done that is because we don't have the funds. Sometimes it's easier just to book those one-on-ones because we can then meet the individual where they're at. In order to have like a collective meetup, it takes more time. It takes actually planning it out. So more of our staff time to actually build that out. So I think initially it would cost a little bit more money, but like those are the funds that we don't have. And I won't speak for others, but those are the things that we want to be doing, but we don't have the funds to be able to do it. Because at this point, it's easier to do those one-on-ones.
So we can't simply just amplify the fund. I would think Linda could probably do that maybe a little more easily than you.
Yeah. We also offer affinity spaces. So like ideally that would happen because that is something from our report. Like they do want to have those common spaces and to learn from each other.
Well, and what I'm also hearing from all of you is the peer-to-peer support is so helpful.
Yeah.
As you go through this growth, all these growth.
An element of this that could be, I think, further leveraged is, every SBDC in the country is hosted by higher education. There's a reason for that. So we're employees of the Vermont State College System, Vermont State University.
Mm-hmm.
There are many campuses that have space that could bring our organizations in to have a combination of, so if the business owner wanted to be in person, there's a place. We know it's accessible, it's safe, there's good Wi-Fi, it's clean, all those things. The other piece to that is that campuses in our higher ed institutions today want the public to come in and to experience what's going on there, to make those, it's like if you bring it, will they come? By being on campus and having those connections and people and meetings, you have computer labs, you have meeting space. There's a natural organic byproduct of that, of having young people in our schools, in our colleges and universities who would become interns in our clients' businesses. There's a myriad of things that could come as a result of some place-based intentionality.
Yeah, and that's why we find our partnerships with all of these organizations, the RDCs, CWE, BT Womenpreneurs, all of these organizations are critical because like we have a direct link so that we can make these things happen, luckily. And it still takes a lot of time and effort.
Yeah, so I just.
A couple more questions,
I just want to make, or just connect a couple things. This whole issue about space is certainly really important. I've spent the last 10 years of my life making third spaces and running spaces and all of these things. It's critical. And I've gotten a lot of business support in co-working spaces. But now that I live in a rural environment, it occurs to me that getting these resources into rural environments becomes a much heavier lift as far as what Wei Wei's saying, as far as like time, energy, coordinating. These are just bigger things, but also it's not anything that we're not used to. This is what we do here. So with this idea of locating at colleges, universities and stuff, that will miss a lot of our deep rural spaces, causing our business owners to have to travel farther, having to do all of these things. So I'm wondering about, this also brings me to our education system, our young people. How are we training them in business? It's becoming a life skill. Branding, self-branding, all of these things becoming a life skill. So how are we incorporating into our education system, into our schools, processes and treating these spaces as the community hubs and the centers that they are? So I want to point everybody to Wilmington, Vermont, to the old school. That is what our former high school, which was previously consolidated, our former high school is now a co-working space. And it is a wonderful education space. It's also providing businesses with the jumping off points to get them to the next level. So I think thinking about the many assets that we have as far as buildings in our communities, can we activate and engage those places in multi-pronged ways?
And did Kurt, did you?
Okay, sure, you guys.
I mean, just deep love to Ann Manwaring and
Yes.
Emily, thank you for bringing that up. And is it called Old School? Because I think that would be a great name.
It's called
Space.
Field.
When we transition some school to something else, we're calling it Old School. I
As
just
opposed to those of us who are old school.
old school to teach the new school. It's gonna be great. It's gonna be great. We need Ann Manwaring to like have a little place to tell us all what to do.
Right.
I believe in reciprocity and that you all have taken your whole morning probably uncompensated. I mean, Abby makes like $2 an hour like the rest of us, but to be here, I see your businesses here, but if you have like websites that you want to shout out, Instagram pages, I know it like doesn't add all kinds of things. So, and like, what we can do to literally support your business for taking the time to be here this morning. Small businesses, especially women-owned ones, need to ask for more things. I missed my colleague's question, but we need you deserve things and you deserve to ask for them. How can we help you?
Well, if anyone wants to buy, sell, or rent, because we're also doing rentals, and do anything to your space, you have a tricky corner. Everyone has a tricky corner in their house.
Yeah.
Please visit our website, steinmetz-vt, steinmetz-vt.com.
Okay.
Like the beer Stein and New York Mets, but with a Z.
On our agenda, so we can all see how it's going.
Let's go around and we'll close it.
Yeah, I mean, obviously I'm a picture framing shop, custom, but we also have a lot of ready-made frames. So instead of dialing up Amazon or going to Walmart, we can offer very similar products. If any of your clients are looking for source artwork for particular places, we also install artwork. So, and we have a gallery that we spend 6 months of the year engaging our community through different types of events. The other 6 months are highlighting other artists in our communities. So stop in one of our events. It's axelsgallery.com.
Well, you could throw a party.
Have
Throw a party at Echo. We'll be
I love it.
Okay, we have two websites and businesses, Partners and Integrative Healing, and that's the primary medical and psychiatric clinic. We're open to people joining us. That's part of why we created this. We're bringing in yoga and body workers, and we just hope to keep growing and offering more and more to our community. We also
Yoga for legislators.
yoga for legislators.
We will pay you to come back.
But you are welcome to come to our yoga class.
The first one you're talking about, I just tried to Google it and it didn't come up. So do you have a specific website on that?
Partners in integrativehealing.com. Partners. I know, it's a lot. It's been an ongoing, our email handle, they want to charge us $18,000 to change it. And then State Street TMS, we offer transcranial magnetic stimulation, which is neuro navigated. It's one of the best treatments you can get in the world for depression, OCD, PTSD, anxiety. We're very excited to bring it to Vermont. There's, I think, 2 or 3 other places in the whole state offering it. It's on every corner in New York. So it's really a critical access. And this year, Blue Cross Blue Shield has authorized us with the new codes. They're ahead of the game and ahead of the country. And so we can do a treatment in 5 days, and it has about a 90% remission rate for depression. So we're really excited to be offering these services to Vermonters. And we're always open to collaborating, shared workspaces, and just growing community. We at one point were featuring artists and then ourselves just got behind, but we have space, and we would love it if people wanted to come display their artwork or just hang out, come for a cup of coffee. We're right down the street. So
That's great. Well, thank you for that.
Certainly.
So
Nick has one.
I have one question, and maybe this is for a service provider question, maybe way too. And Miyako and anybody else in the audience. I know when I've offered like small business planning classes or just like networking events, like the amount of money that it takes to offer the things that we don't think about as far as like diverse groups, whether it's like in particular needs like ASL or language translation or even like neurodivergence and like facilitating different learning needs and things like that. I'm just curious, like we haven't brought that up, but if you feel like you have the money, because I haven't found the money out there to like be able to offer those things as a like nonprofit. So just curious.
We don't have the money.
Yeah, okay.
We want to do that, and that's something that Ruth and I have been working on.
Yeah.
But translation costs a lot. Interpretation in person costs a lot. And if you have multiple people, that's a lot of money. That's thousands of dollars for every single
It's
session.
prohibitively expensive.
Yeah. So
Yeah, for you.
And we have to pay whether the person comes or not.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember when we were fiscally sponsored by CEDO in the city of Burlington, we had wanted some interpreters at our event. I think it cost like $90,000 and $90,000 for interpreters because there are 17 languages in Burlington, Winooski area that are spoken to get people for a long period of time to do that interpretation. It costs a lot of money and it's worth it and people need it. We don't get federal funding for this need because our population is so small. But it's good.
Can I piggyback on that? Because it was during the break, I was saying, I know telehealth and the insurance is changing their coverage, but this is actually one of the reasons why it's so critical. One of our psychiatrists speaks Farsi, Hindi, and Gujarati, and you're not going to necessarily find that in central Vermont, but these are ways that we can increase access to, different people with different skills and things they can offer. So we hope that doesn't go away.
That is worth marketing.
Yeah.
I would just add, some of the things that we're going to be doing is writing down the dialogue and the questions that came up today so that those organizations and executive directors who come before the committees will be thinking about these nuggets to bring forward if they're doing something in that space or they have ideas that they could share. So we're going to wrap it up.
I think the one last ask of all of you is to be champions for the small business sector in Vermont. Be champions, not just when people come to your committees, but with your colleagues in the other committees, because every small business probably touches most other committees in some way. And you all are in the prime position of being able to be their advocates and be able to articulate the challenges that they're facing so that, if a bill comes along in some other committee and they're like, oh, businesses can handle it, you guys can say, well, maybe that won't work for these types of businesses. And you can play that role with other committee members and making sure that a lot of the needs that you heard today have ample voice in your committees. So thank you so very much for the opportunity to be with you today. Thank you so much to our fabulous panelists. Thank you to Linda and Wei and Andy we were together as a team, putting this all together for you today. And just so appreciate the willingness to open this up for such a long chunk of time. Because I think we were able to get into much deeper conversation as a result of that. So thank you so much.
Thank you.